How are you doing today? Good. Okay. My name is Keith Parker, and I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for Government and Community Relations here at UCLA. And I'm going to talk to you about advocacy along with our Interim Advocacy Director, Liz Boatwright-Simon. And we really are appreciative to have the opportunity to talk about advocacy issues and to hopefully get each of you more involved in our advocacy efforts, because truly the campus needs what we call third-party advocates. And I'll say why we need you so much as you go through the presentation. But just on a personal note, your voices are compelling voices. I have elected officials that say, yeah, Keith, but you know what, you're a paid hack. You're not paid to do this. You're doing it because it's something you believe in. You're doing it because you have a commitment to higher education, you have a commitment to UCLA. And so that gives your voices even more power than my voice would have. And your voices are powerful because you benefited from higher education, and you certainly want UCLA to be fully supported and to be accessible and viable for those generations that come behind, because we know it's made a difference in all of our lives. And so you've got a strong voice, and we want your voice to be even stronger. Our theme is Raise Your Voice. We want your voice to be loud, and we want it to be clearly understood, because this is a time when it is the voice of our friends, of our donors, of our alumni, of our students, of our advocates. It is the time when that voice needs to be heard. So let me say a few things. This is our mission as a unit here in external affairs. We want to be able to support the university's larger mission of research, teaching, and service through advocacy, issue management, and liaison with governmental entities, community partners, and our external audiences in order to support that larger university mission. Our vision is to be that link between the campus and the larger community. And I always use this picture, not just because I like that suit, but because this is then City Council member Tom LaBonge, and this is, at that time, our Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor, Dan Newman. And the council member wanted UCLA to be more involved in downtown Los Angeles as a part of his district. And the Provost wanted to get more involved in downtown Los Angeles. And so our job, my job, was to bring them together, again, to be that kind of link. And that's what we try to do in government and community relations. Connect the campus to elected officials, to community-based organizations, to the larger Los Angeles community as much as we can. So, okay, there we go. Let's go back. Okay. So we work with 34 members of the state legislature, 22 members of Congress, 15 members of the City Council, 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, the Mayor's Office, and citywide offices. And so we work at state, federal, and local government. And when you look at, I'll use our state assignment, you look at our assignment in comparison to the other UC campuses, it's not only the size of our delegation, not only the size of Los Angeles County, because we're assigned legislators in a geographic way, it's the importance of those legislators. So it's people that are in leadership roles. So the current pro tem of the Senate, who's the lead officer for the state Senate, is in the Los Angeles area, Senator Kevin DeLeon. The incoming Speaker of the Assembly, Anthony Rendon, he's from the Los Angeles area. The committee chairs for education, for budget. So we not only have a lot of members, we have members that have important roles in leadership positions and have strong voices. So our advocacy makes even more of a difference in terms of reaching them. So we're going to talk about what advocacy is, and at any time you have questions, please interrupt me, interrupt Liz, and let's engage you in conversation, and we'll do Q&A afterwards as well. This is a picture from one of our Washington advocacy days with Congressman Tony Cardenas and some of our student advocates. And in fact, this is from this year in May, when our theme for our UCLA Day in Washington was about supporting federal financial aid support. So our Pell Grants, our Perkins loans, our other federal financial aid programs that enable so many of our students to be able to attend UCLA and to be able to be in higher education. we have a model at UCLA, and the model is all of us in external affairs are about the business of building champions for UCLA. So whether it is our unit that's looking to build advocates on behalf of UCLA, alumni certainly is building alumni engagement on behalf of UCLA, our development team is looking at donors. We are all trying to build even more champions for UCLA. And champions really do make a difference. Champions really do have that impact. And so we have to try to be targeted and strategic when we're talking about our advocacy efforts. And so when we go into meetings with members, we always, no matter where they might be in Los Angeles, we always want to give them a picture of how UCLA is in fact present and touches their district. So this is a map that tells, this is actually Assembly District 47, which is now 54, I guess, but it goes from the Crenshaw area into Culver City, and actually if you look at the very top corner of the map, UCLA is in that district. We talk about how many students and alumni are constituents of that member. We talk about how many faculty and staff live in that district. And that number that says $388 million, that's UCLA payroll going into that district. And so you want to make the point that we make a difference for you wherever you might be. And we do that because we are, and people think about, obviously, you know, the academic side of UCLA, they think about the sports side of UCLA, but we also want them to see us as an economic driver and why that's important. So our economic impact in LA is about $12.7 billion. $12.7 billion. For every dollar the state invests, we generate $34 in economic activity. We're one of the top 5 employers in LA County. And so what it lets us deliver a message, when you cut our funding, you're not just cutting UCLA's funding, you're cutting the dollars that we put back into districts in terms of payroll, in terms of purchasing, in terms of both direct jobs and indirect jobs. And so it helps us to get people to understand that there's a personal side and an institutional side. This is an example of another map for Mark Ridley Thomas, those of you that know his supervisory district. These are community programs that we have in his district. What are our partnerships? We've got 440 community partnerships where students, faculty, alumni, friends, on behalf of UCLA, are engaged in community programs, whether those are around health, around education, around public service, in his particular district. And so again, we've all heard that cliche that all politics are local, and so we have to have that local message. This is a congressional map for Congresswoman Janice Hahn, whose district runs from about LAX all the way down to San Pedro. And again, we'll talk about how many alumni, 20,000 alumni live in her district. We've got 102 community-based programs. There are 5,489 employees that live in her district. And so the further you get away from UCLA, a lot of times members will think you don't do anything except what's in Westwood. That that's where you all work, that's where you all live, that's the only place where you have concerns. And so you have to give them that teachable moment, and the maps help us to do that, to demonstrate that there's a UCLA presence that goes far, far beyond Westwood. So, in our model, and it's a grassroots to grass tops kind of model, we're always looking to decide how do we best utilize our volunteers. There are times when you need to do a mass mobilization, and that might be a more grassroots approach, where you need thousands of letters or emails to go out on a particular issue. There are other times when you need people that have a personal, much deeper personal connection to a member, and so we might be looking at some of our B level or even some of our A level. So just think for a moment. Somebody you went to school with may be in elected office. Somebody who's a neighbor of yours. Someone who belongs to the same church or synagogue or community organization or board that you're on. Someone in your circle of contacts may be an elected official. If you can build a relationship with that elected official, then you have an ability to be a really strong contact and strong advocate with that member. And that's the kind of thing that we need to know, and the kind of thing that we need to utilize. Because we do go from a very broad-based approach on some issues to a very focused, specific approach on other issues, where it's that key person making that phone call to someone, and that phone call makes a difference in terms of their understanding, their perception, and ultimately, we hope, their position on an issue for us. We don't own the issue from A to Z. None of us get a vote when the vote comes up in the legislature or the vote comes up in Congress or City Council. So we don't own the issue from A to Z. But there's a portion of that issue that we do own in the sense of we want to mobilize our advocates to do the best job we can to get that member or members to understand what is the position, not only for UCLA, but ultimately what's the position that's going to support public higher education in California. And I think when I look back, and I've been in this job since 1998, when I look back, I say we've won more than we've lost, but we have lost some. And when we do lose, we try to learn from that and come back and win the next time. But we have won more than we lost because we do have strong advocates, we have a good message, and we do have the obstacle, and I say we come with a bag of ideas. Trial lawyers, Indian gaming, labor unions, they come with a bag of money. Bag of money, bag of ideas. Our ideas have to be persuasive. Our ideas have to be compelling. Our ideas have to resonate with those members if those ideas are going to have impact. Because we don't give anybody political donations. We don't work on anybody's campaign, although as individuals you certainly can. But as an institution, we don't have a political action committee that writes checks. We're not a super PAC. Again, in the presidential campaigns, you hear a lot about super PACs. We don't do those kinds of things. So we've got to come with a bag of ideas. And those ideas have to be conveyed in the best way possible by our advocates, because we always say our goal is to get the right messenger, to deliver the right message to the right decision maker, to get the right decision made. That's what we're trying to do. That's why, again, your voices are so important. So these are some of our big lobby days that we do each year. We've just finished our downtown day in City Hall, last week? Last week. We just finished our downtown day there. We were in Washington in May, and we were in Sacramento in March. And those are the kinds of things that we do in the Capitol, and those are important. But there are a lot of other things that we do that are as important in the district, on campus, and in one-on-one interactions with members. And so I will talk to people wherever I see them. We host oftentimes at UCLA events, at not just sporting events, but other cultural events. We invite legislators and members of Congress and council members. We invite them to campus to meet with our faculty, our alums, our students, to talk about issues of importance to them. We try to find opportunities for engagement, because if we can engage an elected official, if we can help them learn more about UCLA, if we can help them feel, if not an affinity or an interest, but at least an understanding, then I think we have a much better opportunity to gain their support and to build that support into a relationship. All of us that work in external affairs, again, whether it's the alumni group, whether it's a development group, communications, we all are about building relationships, and those relationships, again, help us to build champions for UCLA. So that's what we're trying to do with our advocacy effort. These are our big challenges, and Liz is going to talk a little bit more now about some of our advocacy work. And again, I'll point out term limits. Term limits has been an ongoing challenge for us because I don't know how many of you in this room might know Steve Arditi. Steve Arditi is a UCLA alum. He was the head of the UC office in Sacramento for 25 years. During the period of term limits, when the term limits were shorter, Steve used to say it was like making a speech to a parade because members kept passing through. Now that term limits have been modified for 12 years, we have a little better chance of capturing and nurturing their attention so that we can build champions. And so term limits is a major challenge. Communicating our message, again, keeping our message relevant, keeping it fresh is an ongoing challenge. And the competition for funding. You understand that everybody, as the economy starts to come back, everybody suffered cuts. And everybody is looking to restore those cuts. So, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me keep going. Costs. Look at tuition costs. Now, some of you that have gray hair, that 2007 number is far more than tuition was for you. That was $6,000. Okay, so you paid a lot less than that. And those of you that are younger, you may have been in times when we had these steep increases. And while tuition has been fairly flat now for the last 4 years, it will be flat for the next 2 years for sure. That's a steep jump. And we've not been able to provide parents and families and students with predictability because we've had this roller coaster with the legislature in terms of funding. And so we've had 20% increases in some years. We've had years where the legislature bought off fee increases. And so we've been less stable, less predictable than we certainly would have wanted. So last year, in the budget process, President Napolitano said to the state, we cannot continue with these cuts in this manner. You're hurting us at the core. And we're going to have to protect ourselves. And the president drew a line in the sand. Now that wasn't always well received by people, but I think from my point of view, she had to make a clear statement that we couldn't continue with that cycle of cuts from the state because we do so much of value for the nation and for California in terms of our research funding. And so when you think about opportunities that we provide, 36% of our students are Pell Grant recipients. You think about what we need to do in building out our programs at UCLA. It isn't just about us, it's about California. It isn't just about us, it's about what we contribute to the nation. And so I think the president took a bold stand and said, we will raise fees 5% each year over a 5-year period unless the state is able to fund us adequately. And so back and forth resulted in better funding, but we're still not where we need to be. And so we will now kind of give you some more examples of where we need to be versus where we are.
Hello. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about state funding. As you know, state funding has been on the decline for a few decades now. But one of the messages when we talk about advocacy, you know, it is all about relationships and it's also about having the right message. And there's a lot of bad information out there, which we rely on our advocates to clarify that bad information and to deliver the right, correct, accurate message. So when it comes to state funding, one of the things that you've probably heard is sometimes you hear that the state actually only gives us 7% of our budget or 12%. How many people have heard numbers like 8%, 11%, things like that? Right, so we hear those numbers, but the point we like to make to our legislators is that actually this number here, 454 million, is still 30% or almost 30% of our core budget. So the core budget is what goes to paying our professors to teach and also keeping the lights on in the buildings, you know, maintenance of the buildings. And what's so important about this money is it's not just there to educate our student body, that's very important, but in addition it helps us leverage all the private dollars and the research dollars that we get from the federal government to do research that benefits the whole nation, the world. So who's been looking at the photos that have come from the International Space Station for Hurricane Patricia? Has anyone seen those online all over Twitter? So that's an example. So those are federal dollars, and there's UCLA professors involved with NASA who, you know, those pictures are helping the world prepare for this, you know, disaster. So this is really important stuff. It's not just about our students, it's not just about our professors who need a better salary. This is about the public good, right? And not just, it's about California's economic good, and it's about the world's ability to prepare for disasters. And this is really important work that's being done at the university, and it starts with these state dollars. So that's why this is so important, and we want to make sure that our advocates, explain this to the legislators, that it's not just, educating students. Once again, it's very, very important, because that's the intellectual capital who will, work for the companies of California, but it's really big. It means a lot. So again, it's a message of public interest, not just self-interest, that we're trying to get across. We're producing the talent and innovation that drives this city, the state's economy, and to a degree the nation. Another piece of kind of misinformation that's out there, when we hear about the number of admits for non-residents, sometimes we hear the number 40%. Well, it's true. For the freshman class for next year, we did admit 40%, but actually the yield for out-of-state students is very, very low. So the incoming class, I believe, this year was 28% non-resident, and the entire student body is at 20%. So that was something that when we've been cut over the years, over the decades by the state, the university decided that taking more non-residents was a good idea, because it raises about $100 million a year that helps our in-state students as well. So that's how we handled it. We do see value in a student body from all parts of the country, but really we're making up $100 million. So, but this is, sometimes those numbers get inflated, and we do rely on our advocates to spread the correct information and explain that we are at 20%, not 40%. And also, most recently, we did get $25 million extra from the state to enroll 5,000 more in-state students in the next 2 years. And while
that's UC-wide, not UCLA.
Sorry, UC-wide, true. And but also, note that in the last 8 years, while we have taken more non-resident students, the number of resident students has remained relatively flat. So it's not really at the expense of residents that we're taking non-residents. So these are the types of messages that we need our advocates to have the information correct and deliver it at the right moment to the right legislator to affect policy. So what do advocates do, or what can advocates do? Become involved in our office. Become an advocate. You can sign up at www.advocacy.ucla.edu/join. That'll be the next slide, and it's coming to you, so you don't have to memorize it. Find out who your contacts are. Who do you know? Who is in your class who's now a legislator? Or again, a neighbor who knows someone. What are your networks that lead you to an elected official that can affect change, that can help UCLA and UC and public higher education in general. And identify future candidates that are in the pipeline. Who are those movers and shakers in your community that you're with, that you know they're going to be leaders, community leaders, political leaders. Have relationships with those people. Those are the leaders of tomorrow. And it really does make a difference when you know someone. If you know someone from now and then they're an elected official 10 years from now, it means a lot that you are friends now. And why should you become a UCLA advocate? As Keith was saying, there are a lot of lobbyists out there, and there's a lot of good causes out there too. So we don't want legislators to forget that public higher education is important and has to be funded. They can forget. If they don't hear from us, they think that everything's going okay. We always need more money. So we want you to stay in touch with us. We have a newsletter now that's once a month and we try to keep you updated on issues that we're learning about, that we're communicating with elected officials' offices on, things that might come up. We just had an action effort related to SB 376, which was some legislation up in Sacramento. We asked the governor to veto it. He did veto it, but we think it's going to come back. So, we educate people on certain legislation. We want to keep you informed, and, a lot of it comes back. And I can give you more information about that if you're interested in that particular piece of legislation. So, also, you can come, we meet you where you are as an advocate. So, if what you can do is an email from your desk, in the middle of work, that's great. If you can come in person to one of our advocacy days, that's great too. If you can come to Sacramento with us, come all the way to DC with us to talk about Pell Grants. We want you where you are. We want your participation. If it's getting a bunch of your friends together somewhere to talk about a particular issue, to do letter writing, in person, because that's more fun for you and it's a social thing. We want you to do advocacy the way you want to do it. We also have workshops, so if public speaking is new for you, or you've never had a meeting with an elected official, we can go through that with you, and you can do some dry runs and get comfortable. And another thing, what's great is that a lot of it's just your personal story. That's really the most effective thing. So if you can tell your story about what UCLA meant to you, if you were on scholarship or got certain kinds of grants, and you could tell that story, what it meant to you, what it meant to your family, that's really, really important. Or the undergraduate research that you got to do that exposed you, to research, which made you move on to, do research in your, later life, or, whatever it is, or research that helped your family in some health capacity, something, the drug, that treats, some drugs that treat, certain types of cancer were developed here. Maybe that helped your family. That's something that we have to tell we have to remind our elected officials that work happens here. And so we need that funding to continue that type of innovation. Get informed, get to know your elected officials, get them involved. That's another thing. If you have elected officials tell them about the experts at UCLA. Find out what their interests are, and then explain to them that we have these amazing experts here at UCLA in whatever field they're interested in. Again, these are the websites and the social. We're all over social media, so we definitely want you to get involved. I think my information is here, so please call me, email me. I'd love to be in touch with you. Find out what your interests are. Find out how that might coincide with something we're working on, or an elected official's interest. People we can talk about where you might get involved in advocacy. And I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about actually a critical issue that the university is facing right now in relation to the West LA VA campus. How many here are familiar with the litigation related to the West LA VA campus? A few of you, all of you, so just a few, it looks like. So I'll try to do it I'll try to give you a very quick wrap up, but there are some handouts that we'll give to you, and we hope we can get you involved in some of our advocacy efforts in a few weeks. But essentially, there was litigation, the West LA VA campus. Some homeless veterans sued the Veterans Administration, saying that the West LA VA campus was essentially being misused, that it was supposed to be a home for veterans, homeless or otherwise, and instead it's being used for different uses, like a bus company is parking its buses there, a hotel is doing its laundry there, and there are all these leases that are essentially illegal. So one of the leases that was deemed illegal was UCLA's lease of Jackie Robinson Stadium. UCLA has had a 70-year history of being a partner with the Veterans Administration since the end of World War II. We're a huge medical partner. We treat thousands of patients a year. actually here in our facilities and thousands of patients over at the VA. We have medical residents, doctors with dual appointments at the VA hospital and UCLA hospitals. We also have partnerships in public health, dentistry, nursing, social work. So we have a deep partnership there, and we have been using the stadium since since the 30s, but it sounds like very much so since the 60s. And we have the agreement was in place since the 80s. So in sort of the litigation has been settled. There's a new master plan for the West LA VA campus, and UCLA, all these leaseholders are being kicked off the campus, and UCLA would actually like to keep its baseball stadium. We feel that we're an exception given the long partnership. We feel like we want to keep playing baseball there. However, we want to realign the baseball stadium along with the master plan. So the West LA VA campus is going to be a veteran-centric place, and we want Jackie Robinson to be veteran-centric. We want to offer recreational opportunities there for veterans events, compensated work therapy. We also want to pay fair market rent, whatever that is. That's sort of yet to be determined. And also we have all these other proposals on the table to enhance our medical partnerships and mental health partnerships. We have world-renowned mental health interventions and family resilience building that we'd like to start a whole center around over there and run it jointly with the VA. So we have a lot of amazing proposals on the table. We're working with the VA, we're working with the former plaintiffs to work all this out. But we do need advocates who can tell the VA and veterans that this is going to be good for veterans. It's not just about UCLA kind of continuing to do what it's always done and play baseball on some of the land over there. There's legislation that was introduced by Dianne Feinstein, and that includes UCLA in it, a sort of a special clause that allows UCLA to still maintain the baseball stadium, but develop it more for veterans' use. And that is something that we are going to be starting some letter writing on, and we will be asking you all to write letters. It's a complex issue. We have 3 handouts on it that we'd love for you to read, and I'm open to your questions on that today or questions on it in the future. We'd love for our message to get out to kind of clarify. There's some misinformation that UCLA just kind of wants to go about business out as it always has. So we want everyone to understand that we want to enhance our relationship there. So we could use your help. And I guess I'll just open it up to questions about the entire presentation, not just this one issue. We're happy to answer your questions, and we'd love for you to become advocates.
So as an alumni chapter that is not local or in-state, I'm curious as to how can we advocate maybe more on a national level. So I see a lot of localized issues pertinent to UCLA, but what are we involved in on a national level so that we can engage our bases? And when this presentation started, we felt that a lot of stuff wasn't going to be relevant to us for that very reason. Everything just seems to be very localized. So can you maybe expand on what are you guys doing in terms of initiatives on a national level that we should be advocating for? Because I think that will allow us to make a deeper connection to be better advocates, because now you have alumni all over the country. So
Right.
Do you want to
Yeah.
do this?
Two quick things that are helpful right now. I mean, I think Liz just mentioned the support for Senator Feinstein's legislation. That's one that everybody can weigh in on with that issue. But an issue that is important to us in the higher ed community is the reauthorization of the Higher Ed Act. And that reauthorization hasn't come up yet in Congress. Hopefully it comes up soon, but given that Congress has kind of been stalemated about their direction, about who will be the next Speaker of the House, it hasn't moved. We need that to move because that's where all of the financial aid support is located. And so to continue to fund Pell Grants and to increase the funding for Pell Grants, that is such a California issue. We have 36% of our students on Pell Grants. Pell eligibility is the lowest income level, and they get the same amount that a student in Western Kentucky gets. Well, being in Los Angeles is a lot different than being in some other parts of the country. So support for financial aid and the Reauthorization Act is very important. A larger issue that's also important that has a national implication is the support for research funding. And so part of the proposal the President made was to increase funding for a number of the agencies, the National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, National Institute for Education, and so forth. You think about that, we don't get earmarks. An earmark is a specific language in legislation that would say, and award UCLA $10 million to do nanotechnology research. We don't get earmarks. We compete for funding. And so when you raise the amount of money available for nanotechnology, for example, our faculty will submit proposals, we will compete, and we have done very well, as illustrated by the fact that we get almost $1 billion a year in federal research support. So as an advocate on the national scale, supporting funding for research, and particularly basic research, that's a critical issue for us. And that's been one of our advocacy topics when we've done our lobby days in Washington in the past. So I think to the national question, all politics are local though. Speaking to your Congress member, your legislator, your council member about higher ed issues are still important, whether they have national, state, or local implications, because it puts you in the loop to build relationships. All of us can sign up for newsletters from our members. All of us can do town halls that they put on. Again, we can go to their offices. At the state level in March, we won't do our UCLA Day in Sacramento. We do it every other year there. We'll do it in the district. And so during the month of March, on Fridays, when members are in the district, we will be doing our 34 meetings locally. If you can join us in a local meeting, that will really be helpful, and you'll get a schedule of which areas of the county will be doing our days in the district for our state legislators. Again, I said we just finished our downtown lobby day. That doesn't mean we don't talk to council members again until next year. We're talking to them on a regular basis. Other questions? We have about 10 minutes left. Okay, let me pose a show of hands. How many of you know who your state assembly person is? Okay, not enough hands went up. Okay, Susie's back here waving wildly. Because Susie knows who's her person because she did a candidate forum with us on her person. How many of you know who your state senator is? Okay, not enough hands again. Your Congress member. A little bit better, a little bit better. Okay, so this group, we have a tool to help you. If you go to our website, on our website at the very bottom, I don't think we've got a picture of it here, but if you go to our website, go to the advocacy.ucla.edu site, at the bottom it has this link that says Find Your Representative. Again, as Liz said, the first thing you've got to do is get informed. Who are your representatives? Because that's your first line of communication. We tell people when they go into a meeting with their council member or their senator or their assembly person, the first thing you say is, I'm a constituent. They listen. Because you can vote for them, you can vote against them. You can tell your friends to vote for them or against them. And so knowing who represents you, that's our first step. Because those are the people that work for you. So I have a certain elected official who likes to give me a bad time from time to time because he's somewhat Trojan focused and I'm truly not. And I have to remind him that you work for me. You're my Board of Supervisor member. You're my Board of Supervisor member. So you work for me. So you have to be clear. You're a constituent. Your voice matters. Your ideas matter. You have to express them. You may not get agreement, but it's not because they haven't heard what you've had to say. Because they know, and again, when we talk about writing a letter, when you take the time, and when you sign up in our UCLA Advocacy site, we have lots of formats when we do mobilizations on here's what the letter should contain. But we always say to you, put it in your words. Because it's just an email if it's 200 of the same. But if it's more specific and it's in your words, that person has to look at it and think about it differently. Because if you took the time to communicate with them, then you're expressing a sentiment that other people feel. So do that. Get to know your member, understand our issues, and as you know more about them, what are they interested in as well? I always say to people, we need to be a friend before we look for a friend. And so we try to partner with members around issues. And I'll give you a great example of that. I think hopefully you heard about our UCLA Volunteer Center. And each year we have Volunteer Day. It was September 26th this year. About 6,000 plus students, faculty, alums, and friends went to 48 sites around around Los Angeles County to do community service projects. Projects, they range from cleanups to painting to doing murals to doing in-class instruction to being engaged with the community in a service manner. So how do we move 6,000 plus people from Westwood all over LA County on buses? 120 buses. 74 of those buses were provided by members of the City Council, by members of the legislature, to get our folks from Westwood into their districts to do service projects. They're a part of selecting the sites. They join us oftentimes at those sites because we found areas where we have, some level of mutual agreement about the importance of that project, of that program, of that site. Those are important things in terms of building relationships. And the fact that they're willing to put in money for 74 buses, each bus costs us about $500. It saves money in terms of what the cost of the total day is, but it shows a relationship. Those are the things that we need to do, and we build that around the members' interests. And when we go back and we meet with the member, we thank them certainly for their support, but we keep them updated on what we've done at that particular site. So whether it was in the Valley, whether it was in East LA, whether it was South LA, wherever it might have been, we try to, again, keep that cliche, all politics are local. We try to keep that approach that we're not simply here in Westwood, we are all over Los Angeles because that's what a public institution needs to be able to do. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, this is a low-key group. Low-key.
Who was the SC guy?
Mark Ridley Thomas. But you didn't hear it from me. Paul Krikorian. If any of you are represented by Councilmember Paul Krikorian. Actually, there are far more Bruins on the City Council and in the legislature and in Congress than there are Trojans. But in spite of the fact that we won 3 years in a row, they still keep that 50-0 beat down in their minds.
13-9.
And so for all of us today, we got a real tough challenge because we really need USC to beat Utah today.
Yes, we do.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
It's a no-brainer. Utah all the way.
Yeah, we need them to beat Utah. We have to beat Utah, so we have that tiebreaker. So it's going to be tough for us today. But the good news is beyond athletics, there are lots of research collaborations with USC, and there are lots of opportunity for us to join them on projects of mutual interest. But when it comes to sports, another matter.
In the database of elected officials, do you have their where they graduated, where they went to school, that type of thing?
Yes, yes. What their class is, what their majors were, year of graduation, and interest, things that they're interested in. Those are important things to us. Okay, so David's giving me the 1 minute mark. Grace, real quick.
Thank you. I just want to know one more time, where do we look for these listed chapters? Is that with Alumni?
Go to our website. Go to advocacy.ucla.edu. Find your representative at the bottom. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. We look forward to seeing you in the future. You've got a handout for me of the presentation. It looks different from the presentation, and I'll tell you why real quickly. One of Liz's staff members who did the presentation for me, he's a millennial. They don't like a lot of words. I'm not a millennial. Some of you are not millennials. And so for the millennials in the group, you were fine with what you saw. For those of us that are not, you need to read a little bit more, and you see a little bit more in the handout, but it follows the presentation. Thank you very much. We hope to see you and be involved, and go Bruins.